Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for taking out your time and being here this evening. I hope everyone's doing well and everyone's safe. The last few months have disrupted our lives in many ways, and the last 2 decades, we have faced six deadly viruses, and the sixth one, which is the novel coronavirus, got us. A decade back, well known people like Bill Gates, Dr. Michael Clapper, policymakers, public health officials, even the US intelligence agency had warned about the possibility of a pandemic, and yet the world was not prepared. According to the BBC News, this is not the last pandemic we are going to face. Scientists believe that another pandemic will happen during our lifetime. What should we be doing to be future ready? To help us understand this and equip us better, we have with us today Dr. Zeeshan Ali. Dr. Zeeshan Ali is a PhD in molecular biology from Germany. Currently, he is a program specialist with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine in Washington, D.C., USA. He advocates for diabetes prevention through lifestyle medicine and plant-based nutrition. He creates diabetes prevention fact sheets and infographics for clinicians and public. He organizes diabetes awareness events in collaboration with non-profit organizations, physicians, hospital CEOs, food directors, corporates, and universities, both in India and the USA. Dr. Zeeshan has written several papers and presented scientific data at four international and 8 domestic conferences. A little about Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, that was founded by Dr. Neil Bernard. They combine the expertise of more than 12,000 physicians with the dedicated actions of more than 175,000 members across the United States and around the world. The efforts are dramatically changing the way doctors treat chronic diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and cancer. And by putting prevention over pills, these doctors are empowering their patients to take control of their own health. They're also building a new way of viewing research. Their staff, physicians, dietitians, and scientists work closely with policymakers, the medical community, media, and public to create a better future for the people and the animals. So with this, I'm going to ask Dr. Zeeshan Ali to take over. And Dr. Ali, could you please unmute yourself? Thank you so much for taking out time for us. I know you have a very hectic schedule and I know you're really, really busy, but thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, what a wonderful pleasure to be here. Thank you, Ruchika, for giving me this opportunity. I think it's such a great platform to speak and such a great audience because Ahimsa people and your Earthen One, I think these are the people who would make our world more better and where we can prevent future pandemics if we know how to uh, how to specially care for our animals because
Right.
this pandemic has taught us one thing is that our the way we are using animals, this is if we continue doing this way, there are more to come, there are more pandemics to come. And if there is a lesson we can learn from this pandemic is that we have to decrease the animal use in the way we are breeding and capturing and factory farming and whatnot. So I will
True.
talk all about this in my presentation today, and glad to be here. And I welcome all the participants who are joining from all parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me start my screen sharing here, which might give me a little extra minute because I just want to make sure the slides are displayed correctly. So, Ruchika, do you see full slide or do you see my, um,
I don't see the full slide.
you don't see the full slide? Okay.
No. And by the way, this year we missed having the Ahimsa Fest because
I
of the
know that was
pandemic,
my
you
plan
know.
to join you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's for those who don't know, Ahimsa Fest is India's largest vegan festival, and it's My God, it's the place to be, it's buzzing with people, it's buzzing with the best food, there's music, we have fabulous speakers there. But unfortunately, this year it's not happening.
Okay, do you see the full screen now?
I don't see your screen, doctor.
Oops, sorry. Sorry, people. This is taking a bit too long.
No worries. Can I please request people to put their audio and video off throughout, and we'll take questions at the end of the session.
Now you see the full screen?
Yes.
Wonderful, very nice. So, without further ado, I think let's get started. So, today I'm going to talk about the power of food to fight the underlying conditions for current and future pandemic. My objectives are to tell the people about the relationship between food, chronic disease, and the current pandemic. We will talk about how fats in animal-based foods cause chronic diseases, and then audience will also learn how a plant-based diet offers complete nutrition. As you all know, you might have heard and read many times about the zoonotic origin of pandemics. But what is it? What is zoonosis? So just want to give a very simple definition of zoonosis for people for better understanding is that these are infections caused by a microbe or a virus or a bacteria that comes through animals to humans. That means they have animal origin and we get the infections from animals. COVID-19 came to us through human use of animals, as you all very well know from the wet markets in China. So if you see this picture, you can see that all coronaviruses that have caused diseases to humans have had animal origins, generally either in bats or rodents. You can see in this picture, and let me use the laser here. The laser pointer is here. You can see that uh, the, the SARS coronavirus, which was caused by civet cats, uh, see, this was originated in bats. The swine flu, it came through bats. The MERS virus, which originated in the Middle East, it came through bats. And now the SARS, which is also called SARS-CoV-2 from pangolins. So you see that all these animals, the bats, are hosting these viruses, and they might be fine living with that virus. They might be immune, but then what is happening is because of the human activity and the humans involving them to breed and to catch wild animals, this is causing these kind of pandemics. The virus which would have been fine in bats and in the wild, but you bring those wild animals in captivity in closed conditions and they're very very crowded and cramped conditions, and all these animals like civet cats and pigs and camels and pangolins, they get these are intermediary animals which then are able to pass the virus to humans through urine or through the secretions or whatnot. So there is now what we are understanding with the science and with the studies that there is a very, very, very strong link with animal agriculture, animal use, animal contact, animal breeding, and all these things are helping to spread the virus. And as you all know, human activity is the main reason for this pandemic. And that's why we should learn from this that how we will use animals will play a big role in future pandemics. So if there is any lesson which we can learn from this pandemic is that we should, I would say, we should completely stop animal agriculture and animal farming. If not completely stop, we should definitely reduce it by all means, because all these diseases will come back to us and we are not learning lessons. As Ruchika mentioned, that these viruses have been, this is, I think, the sixth virus of the decade. And all these viruses, we are not learning lessons. They are becoming more and more deadly. Moving forward, as you all know, what happens? is that in these wet markets in China, that they bring these animals, and look at these crowded conditions here in this picture, and you can see the humans have very close interaction. They get exposed, and then they transfer the virus to other people. Avian flu, another which is common in birds, and this is all happening here because you get these virus. Look at I just want to show in this picture that viruses which are residing in maybe in another species, like for example bats or rodents, then can come to close contact with these animals, and then these animals then will transfer them to humans, and then from human to human it spreads like a wildfire. And you might know that how you might have read in several reports that when these avian viruses they spread in these chickens, what they do is they will either bury these birds in millions of numbers or even burn them alive because they don't want that spread. So, and I was reading this article yesterday, which I would like to share with people, is that I was reading about how pigs farming have been such a great reservoir for reassortment of these viruses. They are finding now that there are genes from birds and from other animals, from other species, in this, especially in this H1N1 flu virus, that they are doing all this reassortment of the virus that becomes very, very, very deadly, and all the mutations taking place. So the virus, what it is looking for a very stable host where it can multiply, not cause still not cause infection, and not, I mean, not deadly for that animal, but that animal would be a perfect host to spread the virus. So if there is anything we can learn, I hope you are getting my point. Stop using animals for breeding and factory farming. So now let's come to the science of what happened once we know that these are spreading like a wildfire and these causing future pandemic. So we are learning that the disease of especially this coronavirus, right from the beginning, we found it became very, very clear that this is affecting people very differently. So some people would be completely asymptomatic, that means without any symptoms, but they will be still carrying the virus. And some people got severely affected, and even they reached to a stage when it became life threatening for them, and they have to be on ventilator, and we saw it. Everybody knew that. I don't have to explain that. And we found out, also the research found out that people who had very high mortality rate, that means people who were dying with COVID-19, are those people who had excess weight, those people who have hypertension, who have diabetes, who have some kind of lung disease like asthma, or who were smoking, and heart disease. So that means 90% of COVID-19 related deaths are due to one of these underlying medical conditions. 90%. That means people who died, people who lost their lives, is because they had some kind of underlying medical condition. I just want to give you this example of H1N1 virus pandemic in 2009, and what we can learn from that. So the study size, the study was done among Californian residents over the age of 20 years, and they were hospitalized with H1N1 infection. And what they found is that most of them were obese. So that means extreme obesity was associated with increased odds of death. That means those who were obese we are more susceptible to diet. So you can see in the last bullet point here that uh, those who contracted H1N1 infections, half were obese. That means 50% of the people were obese. So what we learned that obesity is the biggest risk factor for that virus, and even for this virus. So let's try to talk a little bit about excess weight and obesity and what we can learn from the current pandemic. So if you look at people with extra weight and when they get infected with the virus, and if you look who will need the ventilator. So this study actually did that and shows that people with a healthy weight with a body mass index of less than 25 has lower has lower requirement for ventilators as compared to those who had a body mass index over 35, and these people were 7 times more likely to need a ventilator. So that means body mass, keeping a healthy body mass index of less than 25, especially for Indians, I would say less than 23 because of genetic tendency. I would say this would help us avoid the complications of COVID-19. Still, it's nowhere near the end. So what we can learn from this study is that keep your body mass index below 23 if you want to avoid the complications of coronaviruses. What about blood pressure? Because this is another underlying condition for COVID-19, and it's very important that we talk about blood pressure. And when the COVID-19 pandemic appeared, again, things become very clear that people who have high blood pressure have a problem. So 40% of the folks with severe COVID-19 infection had high blood pressure before infection. Especially in a country like India, we know hypertension and heart disease is one of the biggest concerns. And we have to make sure that it's almost like half of the people who had severe COVID infection had high blood pressure. And when we're talking about high blood pressure, let's talk about sodium because salt raises your blood pressure. And plant foods, when we are talking about plant foods, they don't have much sodium. So that's a very best food if you want to avoid hypertension. And we can find out, we can go into a little bit more detail in the foods which have very high sodium and the foods which have low sodium, which are good for you. And when you eat that, you can lower your sodium intake down, keep your blood pressure under control, especially for our seniors, people over the age of 40. They have high tendency of getting hypertension. So it's very good for them that we take care of our seniors, and people over the age of 40 also should be very careful about their sodium intake. So sodium intake, if you see that some foods which have their sodium intake, you can see one orange medium size will have 1 milligram of sodium, nothing, right? Apple, one medium size will have 2 milligrams of sodium. Brown rice, 1 cup has 20 milligrams of sodium. Potato, 13 milligram, all very low. Now look at the other side of the picture. You will be surprised to see McDonald's fries, 100 gram, 260 milligrams of sodium. Namkeen Save, which is a pretty common snack in India, and everybody will either eat it in the evening or at some point, has 1 cup has, and easily when you are sitting with your friends, you can easily consume 1 cup of Namkeen Save, and that will give you 208 milligrams of sodium in just one particular food. And forget about all the samosas and the kachoris and all the other cheesy stuff which we eat, which have again very high in sodium. Fried chicken, 100 grams, has 77 milligrams of sodium. And Domino's pizza, which I know this is very, very, very important for people in India, because going to a pizzeria and eating a pizza or having a glass of Coke is a trend. And I just want to warn people that just a slice of Domino's pizza will have 400 milligrams of sodium, and it's not good for your blood pressure, not good for your heart. And salt is something which is actually as added as a preservative and to any kind of snacks and cheese. So I would completely say avoid sodium as much as possible. And these kind of foods which we eat regularly, in these greasy burgers or a fried chicken or a gulab jamun with koya and ghee and whatnot, these are all this all makes things more difficult, because gulab jamun might not have sodium, but because of so much fats in that, it will make your blood more viscous, and it will be your heart will face more pressure to push blood in your circulatory system. So if your blood is thick, your blood pressure goes up. So all these foods we have to avoid as much as possible. So how can we reduce our blood pressure with a plant-based diet? So I would say know your numbers. Very, very important. You should aim for a blood pressure less than 120 by 80. 120 systolic, diastolic 80, and this is the range you should keep. Next thing is choose plant-based foods because we know that vegetarian diets lower blood pressure by 7 to 5 points for both systolic and diastolic. Third point I would say is reduce salt intake. So somebody must ask that, okay, so how much we should consume? I would say to give you the number that adults should consume no more than 1500 milligrams of sodium each day. Make sure to control that. Then the best thing for you is power up with potassium because potassium is found abundant in fruits and vegetables. And if you consume at least 4,000, I think it was 4,700 milligram of potassium each day, and you can control your sodium level. You can really bring it down. So power it with potassium. And what is a very good and easy source of potassium, guys? Banana, very high in potassium. Must everybody must eat it who have blood pressure problems. And maintain a healthy weight because keeping a good waistline, keeping your body mass index below 23 in the range from 19 to 23 is good. And a plant-based diet can easily uh, bring you there to that level. I promise that. Another point is exercise, that at least 30 minutes of moderate physical activity each day, at least 30 minutes. So aim for that because we know that exercise has so many beneficial effects, especially people who have problem with emotional eating. So they eat when they are stressed out. So exercise really helps relieve that emotional stress. So you will not end up eating more than what you want. Limit alcohol intake, very important. Limit alcohol consumption, and so do limit your tobacco. So all these things you can keep your blood pressure under control and avoid this pandemic's severity and complications, and also be you will be you will be avoiding the future pandemics complications. So I want to talk about a study here which is called DASH diet. If you know, it's called Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So this is a lifelong approach to healthy eatings, and it was designed to help treat or prevent high blood pressure. That means it will treat and prevent hypertension. And the idea was that it was developed to lower the blood pressure without medication. So this was the whole idea, that they thought that can we do it? Can we lower the blood pressure with the diet itself? So they did this study with 459 adults, and they asked them two things: increase your fruits and vegetable intake and reduce fats, saturated fats, meat, and all kinds of other fats. Very, very simply, two things. And the people who were on a controlled diet, the controlled diet people were just, it was low in fruits and vegetables, and they had dairy products, and they had fat content, which is typical of the average diet in the United States. So what happened? I just want to show you the results. If you can see, let me point with the highlight. So just for better understanding. So this is systolic blood pressure here. They started with 132, and you can see the control diet is shown here in this line. If you can see my high pointer. So that means for people who were eating low, a diet which was low in fruits and vegetables, and they had some kind of with a fat content of the typical American diet, maybe around 40-50% fats. What about people who ate fruits and vegetables? So their blood pressure was, systolic blood pressure got reduced, and it's better. But look at the combination diet. What is the combination diet? That means people, as I mentioned, who ate fruits and vegetables in the diet and who also reduced their fat content. Look at the reduction in their systolic blood pressure. And you might know that systolic is during a heartbeat, right? When your heart is beating, that pressure is systolic, and between the heartbeat is diastolic. So I want to even show you the graph for diastolic blood pressure. And again, you can see that control people had this line at the top, then people who just ate fruits and vegetables, and the combination that people who ate fruits and vegetables and also reduced their fat content, their blood pressure got dropped. And why is this? It is because of potassium in a fruits and vegetable diet. This was very, very, very good study. And look at the number of weeks. So here you can see intervention week by 8 weeks. You were able to see uh, you were able to see the drop. So, and the drop can be seen here just in 2 weeks. It started reducing and it maintained for 8 weeks. So here you can see in this line that how the blood pressure has dropped in just 2 weeks. So if there is an urgent fix we can do quickly is follow this kind of diet with lots of fruits and vegetables, reduce your fat intake, and within no time you will see your blood pressure is under control and you can avoid the complications of this pandemic. We talked about excess weight and obesity. We talked about blood pressure. I want to talk about diabetes because we know how critical is diabetes in this COVID-19 situation. But before that, we want to understand a little bit about the numbers. So fasting glucose, as you know, जब भूखे पेट जब हम अपना sugar लेते हैं, so it should be below 100 milligram per deciliter for healthy people. For those people who have diabetes, their fasting glucose is between 100 and 125. For people with diabetes, their fasting glucose is always above 125. Similarly, for A1C, hemoglobin A1C is the average blood glucose level over a period of 3 months. So for healthy people, it should be below 5.7%. For people with pre-diabetes, it is anywhere between 5.7 to 6.4. So our aim and our goal should be to keep our A1C below 5.7. And people with diabetes is always above or equal to 6.5%. So these are blood sugar controls numbers which we should keep in mind. And now let's see in the current future pandemic, what did we learn from the studies which came from China? So this became very clear very early from the reports, which came from China, that people who have a poor control for diabetes, that means their blood sugar levels are above normal most of the times, had a high mortality rate of 11%. Here in this graph, you can see that people who have a poor control had a high mortality rate. This is mortality rate. That means how many people out of 100 people will die is people who have poor control. Out of every 100 people, 11 people will die. And now you look at, see those who had their diabetes under control, only 1%. So that means the people who died from diabetes had a very poor control, and those who have good control are much better off. So we want to make sure that during this pandemic, those who are listening to this talk, and if their family members have diabetes, please, please, please make sure that the diabetes remain under control, either with medication or even with food, but it has to be under control. Please do not ignore this because this is an underlying condition for COVID-19. Now I want to focus on some observational studies, and the one I have picked here is Adventist Health Study. And if you know, a brief description about Seventh Day Adventist population is that they go to a church. The church asks them to avoid alcohol, tobacco, and caffeine. Can somebody please mute their mic? I'm hearing some sound from audience. If you can please mute, thank you so much. So I was talking about this Adventist health study too. These people, Seventh Day Adventist people, they go to a church, and the church asks them to avoid few things. So as when it comes to meat, these people, some people they eat meat and some they don't. So for research studies, these are some great research subjects because there are less variation with other things. So only variant was meat eating versus non-meat eating. So researchers thought, why don't we study these people and see what is their body mass index? So you might have seen this graph before because this is pretty common study which all plant-based researchers talk about it. But the bottom line here is that those who were following a plant-based diet, you can see in the blue graph here, had the lowest and healthiest body mass index of 23.6 as compared to those who were eating non-vegetarian diet with all kinds of meat. And it's a very significant study, 60,000 people. So you can see, and this is just observation, so no intervention done. So what we can learn from this is that a healthy diet can keep your body mass index low without any intervention, and all you have to do is just eat well. And they also saw that what is the type 2 diabetes prevalence in this population. So they saw again the same thing. You can see the blue graph here the blue bar here shows that only 2.9% of type 2 diabetes prevalence in people who were consuming a plant-based diet as compared to those people who were eating a non-vegetarian diet. Their type 2 diabetes prevalence was 7.6%. So again, what this study shows us that a plant-based diet will keep you safe and healthy from chronic diseases. And if you are safe from chronic diseases, you can be safe. You can possibly avoid the complications of COVID-19 and future pandemics too. I want to talk about an intervention study. That was an observational study. This is an PCRM's intervention study, which was done in 2006 by Dr. Neil Bernard. And this was a randomized controlled trial. And it was 99 people with type 2 diabetes, A1C around 8 to 8.1 percentage points. And what they asked people to do is that on a controlled diet people, they said that you can eat a diet recommended by American Diabetes Association, like portion control, little bit of this, little moderation. That you can eat everything, but in moderation. But those people who were in the experimental group, they were asked to eat only a plant-based diet and avoid any kind of added oils. So you can see here that the red line shows the people who were on a controlled diet, and you can see that their A1C dropped, but not to a significant percentage, maybe just by zero point 0.4 percentage points in 22 weeks. And look at this blue line. These are the people who followed a plant-based diet, avoid added oils, and look at their drop in A1C by almost 1.2 percentage points. And I can promise that there is no available commercial drug in the market right now which can drop A1C that quickly by that many percentage points. I can guarantee that. And that look at this results in just 22 weeks. The drop was even found in just 11 weeks, but it continued till 22 weeks. And we followed up with these people for a few years, and their diabetes never came back. So this study showed us that diabetes, if reversed by a plant-based diet, can and will not. Let me reframe that sentence. That diabetes can be reversed, and it is not a one-way street. It is a two-way street. That means the doctors, when they tell you that you have diabetes, now you have to be on medication through your entire life, don't have the current knowledge of the current research. They don't have the right access. They are not telling you the right thing. We are seeing examples. We are seeing patients who have reversed their diabetes completely without any medication, just through plant-based diet. When you are doing this kind of diet, make sure if you are on medications, don't change your medications. Work with your doctor, and the doctors will automatically keep reducing your medications over time. We don't want any kind of mess up with the medications you are taking. So now I want to explain you the mechanism of diabetes. And you might have seen this. This is a beautiful illustration. I think Dr. Bernard always uses in his talk, but I love it the way he explains it. So this is a muscle cell, and you know that our body cells needs fuel, like any machine that runs on fuel, right? Similarly, our cells needs fuel, and the fuel is the glucose. And how do we get the glucose? Glucose, we get it from the food. So the food we eat gets converted into glucose. The glucose is then has to enter the cell to provide energy, right? How it happens? So look at this. The glucose cannot enter the cell on its own, right? So that means it needs some help. So these are the doors in the cell. I would say that in the basic terms is for the glucose to enter the cell. And this is the key is insulin. So insulin is made in the pancreas, and this is in the blue. You can see here is the insulin receptor in the cell. So the glucose molecule can enter the cell only when the insulin, which is secreted in the pancreas, is a hormone. This binds to its receptors, and then only it will allow the doors for the glucose to open up, and then only the glucose can enter the cell. So then everything is fine, right? But then if our diet is healthy, this will be in the normal process like it is happening now. But what if our diet has a lot of animal foods in it? So if we are consuming beef or fish or chicken or high in oils and saturated fats, so these are some numbers in the fat content. If you are eating a diet with a lot of fat content, for example, chicken with 23% calories coming from fat, beef, 29% calories coming from fat, Fish, depending on the variety, 30 to 60%, and olive oil, 100%, because all the calories coming in olive oil are from fats. That's why it's 100%. So if you have this kind of diet, and milk, for example, is 49% calories of fat. So people in India always think that, India is a vegetarian society, milk is good, but let me tell you, milk is 49% calories by fat. And we will talk a little bit more about milk because that is really very, very important. So when you are eating this kind of diet, what happens? We see that the fat is starts building up inside the cell. These are called intramyocellular lipids. And when they build up inside the cell, although your pancreas is making insulin, and insulin will come to bind these insulin receptors, but somehow the glucose will not be able to enter the cell, because in spite of insulin binding to its receptors, the doors for the glucose will not open. So what we should do, we should do something so that these buildup of fat particles should get disappear. How it can do? By reducing fat content in your diet. If you are on a plant-based diet, you're automatically consuming very, very, very less fats, no added oils. So you will see once you do that, the glucose is able to enter the cell, and the cell will have its will be able to survive. And that's how this process of insulin resistance is tackled. So that means a diet low in fats, high in plant-based foods can avoid insulin resistance and keep you safe from diabetes. Now, when we are talking about of all these conditions, I want to touch base on heart disease. Here, I want to talk about a study from Dr. Dean Ornish. This was published in Lancet in the year 1990, and it was a big study. It was a landmark study, and what it told us, and what they tried to explore in this study, or what they tried to do the research on this study, is that can a lifestyle intervention be effective in reversing heart disease? So this was lifestyle intervention versus usual care. Usual care, the doctors will prescribe you medications, lipid lowering medications, and cholesterol lowering medications, and that's how it goes, right? But they want to see, what if we change our lifestyle? So Dr. Dean Ornish thought about this and did this study. And here you can see this is a normal artery. So the blood flows in the arteries, and if there is no blockage, the blood flows easily. But look at this narrowing of the artery. And if your diet is high in fats and cholesterol, it builds up in the arteries, and it's caused narrowing of the artery. And that's why we see so many heart diseases, and even a stroke, because of this kind of phenomena. So Dr. Dean Ornish's study, what they did is they had this experimental program where they asked people to eat a vegetarian diet, and they asked them to walk for half an hour, like as I told you, 30 minutes of exercise, manage stress, and avoid tobacco. These are the experimental group. For the control group people, what they asked them is that they were eating the regular food, like again the conventional food. What doctor says, yeah, you can eat in moderation, everything is fine. And they were on aspirin, they were on lipid lowering medications, and there was advice from personal physician. So nothing like a real coaching like in the experimental group. So the results after 1 year, so the people who were in the experimental group, their cholesterol dropped down by 24%. And look at their low density lipoprotein, the bad cholesterol, it dropped down by 37%. And look at the weight, dropped down by 22 pounds, 10 kg. And 82% of the people had their heart disease completely reversed. So when they see their arteries, the blockage was gone, and the blood can flow easily. So this was a landmark study, and every physician who is treating people with heart disease must read this and try to implement some of those elements in their patient counseling. Now, the last thing which I want to talk about here is immunity, right? Because we want to eat food where we can have immunity to this COVID-19. I'm not saying that you eat this food, you will be completely immune to COVID-19, but we can enhance and boost our immunity so that if we get this infection, we are better off with our immune system ready to handle that. So we know that high fat diets reduce natural killer cell activity. That means diet high in fats, it reduces our body to fight infections. We have natural killer cells, white blood cells. All these cells, they help us fight the infections. So far, I just want to make sure that this is very clear. People don't think that they are eating a plant-based diet, so they will be fine. They don't have to wear mask, and they can be they will be safe from coronavirus. No, you have to take all preventions and precautions, boost your immunity, but you have to be careful. And so far, we don't have any research actually on the immunity and its impact with the virus. So we don't have that data, but we know from previous studies that all these things, they they reduce all these high fat diets reduce the our ability to fight infections. So what we learned from previous epidemics and previous pandemics is during the H1N1 flu and during the H1N1 crisis, half the folks who were diagnosed had obesity issues, which directly impair white blood cell function. That means that obesity is a risk factor for lower immunity. So this is very interesting because we thought, okay, obesity will be linked to COVID-19, will be linked to diabetes, but also to impair your white blood cell function. White blood cells are your body's defense mechanism, and you need them whenever there is infection. And if immunity decreases with obesity, then we have to be very careful. We have to control the fats in our diet. Also, white blood cells, they, as you know, that they recognize, they destroy and engulf viruses. But if there you have fat in your cells, that impairs their strength. They are unable to do their job if there is so much buildup inside the cell. So again, the oil and the fats and the animal fats in your diet will have to go off from your diet. Here I want to talk about a little bit about very specific to India, because we talked about all the latest research and science, what we have learned from this pandemic and the diets and the blood pressure. But I wanted to see what kind of dietary habits we are having in India and what kind of diet we are eating. So this study, which was done in, I think it was 2007, I guess. Yeah. This compared the annual per capita food consumption by different income classes between 1983 and 2000. So this is a bottom income group. Here is the upper income group. And you can see that the consumption of coarse cereals like ragi and bajra and jowar has decreased by almost 70% in both the bottom income group and upper income group. You can see the consumption of edible oils has increased by almost 80% in both the bottom and upper income group. And look at the consumption of meat, fish, and eggs, almost 100% increase in both the population. So what does it tell us? It tells us that we are consuming a diet which is very low in coarse cereals and very high in edible oils and meat, fish, and eggs. So gone are the days when we will have this jowar roti and bajra roti. Now it's mostly processed roti, and we are eating a diet high in fats. So if you see the number of calories coming from these kind of foods, so here I'm just giving you an example with urban India, and you can see almost 487% more calories as compared to between 1983 and 2000. That means in 1983, we were just eating a very healthy diet. But by 2000, we are seeing these amazing changes in our dietary habits. And this is the result that why our diabetes numbers and our diabetes population has increased over the last 20, 30 years. And now we have over 70 million, maybe 79 million people with type 2 diabetes in India. And because of this, why we are having this? Because these are the companies which are using these meat, fish, and dairy products, and all these fast food outlets numbers are growing in India. And here you can see the McDonald's. This is a chart which compares the number of outlets in 2008 and 2017 with four chains: McDonald's, Domino's, KFC, and Pizza Hut. And you can see that how in just a period of 9 years that their numbers have increased. And this is 2020. And I'm sure that all these bars are way up than what I'm showing you here. So all these fast food outlets, what they want is easy food, fancy food for us, but we are not seeing what we are consuming. Obesity, I want to talk about it is because It is especially for the population in India, because this is very specific to India, and please keep in mind. And I mentioned that this is a risk factor for this pandemic. And for people in India, the overweight and obesity, they occur at a lower body mass index. As I told you that body mass index of 23 is considered healthy, not 25. In USA here it's 25, and if it is 25, you're fine. But in India, we have to keep it below 23, and anything above 25 is considered obese and considered overweight. So we have to make, and why it is happening in India, because we have a genetic tendency for that, that our we store fats in our abdomens, and abdominal obesity, that's why we it's very prevalent. And the most worrisome thing is that it is increasing both the urban and rural population. You can see that how it is that the obesity prevalence is increasing. Now, I want to talk about that, how a single fatty meal can do to your arteries. You know what a single fatty meal and how it does it to your arteries, and how the fat buildup happens. So when we eat something, and it may be out of our sight, it may be out of our mind, but it is not out of our bloodstream. So I want to talk about it. That what happens when we eat a fatty meal? Because people say, "Oh yeah, one time it's okay," right? Now, occasional eating is okay, but as long as we are keeping a good routine throughout the week. But I just want to show what a one fatty meal does to your arteries. So when you eat our traditional Indian diet, which is whole food, plant based, with no fat and oils. So if you take a blood sample after 1 hour of consuming this healthy diet, your blood will appear like this. So you take the blood, you centrifuge it down, or you just don't centrifuge, let it sit for some time, and the clear serum will appear at the top. And this is it is so clear that you can read a newspaper behind it. It is that clear. So this happens when you have consumed a meal which is whole and less in added oils and less in saturated fats. But what about a high fatty meal? Like I gave you an example, a diet high in fats, for example, paneer and gulab jamuns and cheesy pizzas and fried chickens and whatnot. When you have these kind of food, and when you take the blood sample, and you see that now the serum, which was previously clear, is not clear here. It's very cloudy. Why it is cloudy? It is because of, it is called postprandial lipemia, because you are eating a meal which is high in fats, and this increases your triglycerides level, your cholesterol level, and your clotting factors in the blood are activated. And this happens in just as quickly as 1 hour after your meal, after you have consumed your high fat meal. And you can compare, you can see how clearly you can see the difference between the clear serum and the lipemic serum after a high fat diet. So if you see the chart here, it says again the cloudiness here, you can see plasma lactescence units. And again, a high fat meal you have consumed here at 0 hours, and after 1 hour, you see after 1 hour it starts rising, this cloudiness. And this is after one high fatty meal. And it takes 5 hours here. You can see this point here, 5 hours, right? You can see my pointer. So it takes 5 hours for your liver to clear the fat out of your blood. But the problem is that when we eat a high fat meal, by the time the liver is able to clear your blood out of all the fats, you are ready for another meal. Exactly. You got it. You are ready for another meal. So that means your blood is always thick and always viscous, and always your triglycerides and cholesterol levels are high. And this is the reason why we are seeing so many cases of cardiovascular diseases in India, because your blood never gets cleared off from all the fats. Everybody is with me. I hope everything is going clear and easy. Okay, now you must be considering, okay, what is the solution of all these things? Like I mentioned, all these underlying conditions, what we should do. What if there is a super pill that is proven, that doesn't cost much, and the doctors are able to prescribe it? Yes, I would say that the pill already exists, and it's in the food we eat. Whole food, plant based diet, fruits, vegetables, legumes, grains. If you focus on these four food groups, you have the perfect recipe for a perfect diet. So just to define what would be that kind of diet which will look like. It will be a very high in fiber because fiber is only found in plants. It is not found in eggs or meat or dairy. You can only get fiber in plants. It is very high in fiber. It has low glycemic load. It is low in fat. It is high in antioxidants and low omega 6 to omega 3 ratio if you are eating a plant based diet. Just keep that in mind. And glycemic load, like when I mentioned low glycemic load, it's an indicator of the amount of carbohydrate in the food. How much carbohydrate is there in the food is called the glycemic load. And how it differs from glycemic index is glycemic index gives an idea of the glucose released from the food. So what do you want? You want a glycemic index where the glucose is released slowly. You don't want a glycemic index where it causes spike in your blood glucose level. So the definition of a whole food plant-based diet is that 75 to 80% you should consume unprocessed carbohydrate. When I say carbohydrate, don't try to think that even maida is carbohydrate. We can consume that. No, unprocessed. It's very, very important. You don't want to remove the fiber from it because maida has no fiber. 10 to 15% of plant-based protein and 10% fat. As long as you can keep these numbers, you will be good to go. Keep this in mind because you don't know where are the calories coming from. If you have these kind of diet, just to give you an example, that 1 gram of sugar, like any carbohydrate, will have 4 calories, while 1 gram of fat will have 9 calories. So easily you can, without knowing, you will end up eating way too many calories than what your body actually needs. So we don't have, especially in people in India, because we are people, all the Western countries, they look to India when it comes to traditional foods and healthy foods. And these are some examples of food you can eat at home: 100% whole wheat flour chapatis and navratan navratan korma with tofu, which you can replace it with from paneer. I mean, you can replace paneer with tofu. Sorry for that. And all kinds of mixed vegetables and brown basmati rice and methi sweet potato paratha, and all these recipes you can find on our website if you go to pcrm.org/India. And these are some typical days meals idea, but I think I don't have to give you these meal ideas because if as long as you get the point that you have to reduce the fat, you have to keep the oils low to avoid all these chronic conditions. Just want to talk a little bit about fruits because people often can think that fruits for people with diabetes, because it is high in sugar, we should not eat it, right? Is it a myth or a fact? I would say that it is a myth because sugar in fruit is bad for you. It's a myth because sugar in fruit is not just poured in there, it's packaged with fiber and packaged with minerals and potassium and vitamin C and all kind of protective phytochemicals and antioxidants you need. So those who say that no fruits for people with diabetes, I would say it's a myth. You can eat fruits as much as you want. Maybe initially when you are changing your diet, you have to be bit careful. But once you are all set with your dietary changes, you can eat as many fruits as you want because fruits are very protective and repair your cells. And there are multiple studies, they have shown no effect or a beneficial effect on blood sugar levels in overall health. That means either there will be, if you consume fruit, either there will be no effect to your blood sugar levels, or there will be a beneficial, but nothing, no studies have proved that the sugar in fruit is harmful for you. And they also have anthocyanins to promote brain health. And there are so many studies in which have been reported that people who eat fresh fruit daily are 12% less likely to get type 2 diabetes than those who never or rarely ate it. So there are multiple studies which have shown the benefits of fruits. Um, uh, People always think, as I already mentioned, that I have diabetes, I can't have fruit. No, you can. Fruit is good for people with type 2 diabetes. Another thing which I want to tackle here is that please, in India, people in India, when they're cooking, please minimize oils. Target less than 30 grams of fat per day. I would say we target for 10 grams at our home. Uh, but I would say less than 30 grams is recommended according to this study in 2009. And all whole food plant-based diets have small amounts of fat, so you don't have to add any kind of added oils. And low fat plant-based diets help insulin work better, because I already explained you the mechanism that how insulin resistance works. If you decrease the fat, you are less susceptible, you are less likely to get diabetes. And always make sure that limit your nuts seeds to one small handful or less per day, because nuts can be high in fat, so you have to make sure you don't eat too many. And although they are plant-based, nuts are plant-based, but still you have, because of the fat content like coconut and avocado and nuts, you have to make sure that you don't eat too many. You have to limit that. And omit oil for optimum weight loss. As I said, that if there is a way you can completely omit oil, that's very good for you. So some common questions that people always think, that if they are changing their diet, but if they are not eating meat, where will they get their protein? I want to tell them that beans and breads and cereals and veggie burgers and nuts and lentils and soy chunks and soy milk, all these are good sources of protein. Just to give you some numbers, here you can see that half cup of soy chunks has 56 gram of protein, 1 cup of soy milk has 10 gram, 1 cup of red lentils has 18 gram. And you have to keep in mind that an average person will not need a lot of protein. Whatever they need will get easily from their diet. They don't need to complement their protein with anything. Your body, whatever needs protein, even there are proteins in fruits, so you don't have to actually worry about your protein needs. It will easily be satisfied if you are eating a healthy plant-based food. And those who are, like, let's say, who have high protein needs because of some specific health conditions such as infection or following a surgery, and they can include like foods like beans or peas or lentils, which are high in protein. So, and especially athletes who are really want to bring, there are so many athletes who are on a plant-based diet and they are doing good for their protein needs, so you don't have to worry about meat as your only source of protein. No, it's wrong. What about calcium? We know that when we talk about calcium, people think that the only source of calcium is milk. But I want to tell you that think about beans and greens when you are thinking about taking your calcium, because beans and greens are full of calcium, especially dark green leafy vegetables, and milk is not the only source of calcium. So actually, if you see what is in the milk, and I told you that earlier that milk has 49% calories by fat, and the main nutrient in whole milk is actually fat. So you can see protein as 21%, sugar 30%, and fat as 49%. So people often ask that what if we avoid the fat and we use a skim milk? So stay away from it as much as possible, because there are so many alternatives available in the market. Soy milk and almond milk. And for example, we gave a talk in our Hindi program on October 7th, and my wife, she's a food for life instructor with PCRM, and she showed us that how you can make your own soy milk. And I know there are so many people in India who know how to make their soy milk. So you can make soy creamer also, and if you can just get the same taste of your chai, if you add soy creamer to your chai, without dairy meat, without dairy milk. All right. So moving forward, just to compare whole milk versus broccoli. Here I gave an example of broccoli, but you can compare with methi ki bhaji or spinach or any other greens. So you can see that the beta carotene level and vitamin C level and iron and fiber is so high in vegetable as compared to whole milk, while fat, saturated fat, cholesterol, sodium, all the bad sides are high in milk. So again, keep an use plant-based sources when you are looking for your calcium supplement. But very important thing is that we talked about calcium, we talked about protein, iron. I would say you don't have to worry about your iron needs. But the most important thing when somebody is on a plant-based diet is that they have to take vitamin B12 supplements. And this is really, really important for the healthy nerve function, because especially, you know, that there is an insulation around the nerve. It's called myelin sheath. And if you don't have vitamin B12, you don't have healthy nerve function, and you cannot get it from a plant-based diet. You can only get it from animal foods. But if you are not consuming animal foods, you definitely need supplements. This is at the end. This is my take-home message that the prescription for everyone is that we have to avoid animal products because of very high fat content in them. Please aim for fat less than 3 grams per serving, and the bonus will be that high fiber diet, 3 plus grams per serving is good for you. So one thing which I would like to share with the audience, that please, if you get a chance to share this information with your family and friends who don't understand English, who speak Hindi. PCRM has started this three sessions or three series program in Hindi, and people can register at pcrm.org/healthy India. It's a free program. And we earlier we talked about diabetes, heart disease. On October 28th is our next and last program, and we will talk about weight loss and obesity and how you can control weight through a plant-based diet. Please share this registration page with your family and friends, and let them uh, understand the benefits of plant-based diet in Hindi language. So we will speak Hindi in the entire program. So with that, I would like to conclude my talk. Thank you so much.